Good morning. It is Thursday, September the 19th, 2019. Welcome to a brand new edition of Fumblegate. I'm Jason. That's Adam. Twitter handle's at the bottom of the screen, so you make sure you give us a follow on the Twitter. Facebook.com/Fumblegate. Follow us on there. Give us a like on there, and leave us a funny meme or something. We always enjoy those. A lot of show today. There's quite a bit to get to. I've got papers, and Adam's got papers.
Yeah, drama and all kinds of fun stuff. Changing quarterbacks.
Monstrous.
The end of an era.
Multiple eras, possibly. We'll talk about both those, both in NFL and college. A couple of really monstrous NFL dogs this week, so we'll see what happens with those. We'll talk about that. Also, of course, the Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week, and we have some more, another outstanding selection, I understand.
You can see the list right here. We got, I believe.
We got like 10?
Yeah, it looks like 10.
10 or 11?
And I stopped. I didn't even do NFL because college did not disappoint this week.
No, it didn't. So we have that. And of course, 3 NFL and 3 college games that we'll talk about. We'll make picks for. And also at the end of the show, our college football upset pick of the week. So you'll want to be tuned in for that and see what team should be on upset alert. Maybe it's your favorite team. We'll reveal those towards the end of the show. You all set over there?
Yeah.
Y'all set over there, Obi-Wan?
We'll hang up with the flow and the hood, and yeah, we're good. We're good. We're all set.
You got the salad straight now?
Yeah, it's this live, live TV here. It makes it difficult sometimes. We're good. We're all set.
Okay, so let's get into it. We'll talk, first half of the show. We're going to talk about the NFL, and it's maybe we're, as we talked about, maybe the end of an era. Maybe we're ushering in a new era. Quarterbacks
could be a new like looking at what's happened the last week. Could be a lot of turnover with quarterbacks that maybe not necessarily this year, but it's the next 2 or 3 years. We're going to see a lot of brand new starting quarterbacks from guys who played a long time in the same color jersey. It's going to be really interesting.
Well, Drew Brees had thumb surgery. They're thinking he's going to be out probably 6 weeks. They didn't stick him on IR, so that's got to give you encouragement if you're a Saints fan.
Yeah, they're anticipating he's going to return, so that's good news for Saints fans.
Good for me too, because I picked him to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was new. Ooh, watch out now.
Well, and so you have that, and then Big Ben is done for the year. Had to have surgery on the elbow, so he's gone. Mason Rudolph is in. And you just wonder now if you're a fan of both or you just like seeing them both near the top because they always are. This is going to be a tough road to hoe for both of them to make the playoffs. And looking at the way teams are set up, I think you can already write this season off for Pittsburgh.
I think Pittsburgh thus endeth the season. In Pittsburgh, and nothing against Mason Rudolph, and we know he threw for like a bazillion yards in college because of the offense he plays in with Mike Gundy.
But if he was anything decent, he would have already been pushing Big Ben for the job there, or somebody would have already traded for him.
Well, yeah, they traded away Josh Dobbs earlier this season, and I think obviously there wasn't any inkling that Big Ben was going to have this elbow issue. They just haven't looked good, even when he was in there. They obviously week 1 they got drugged by New England. Now New England's going to be pretty daggum good, and we know that. But to not even put up a fight against New England, and then obviously the injury occurring during the game, I think he had thrown about 6 passes before he came out of the game for good, but didn't look good. When Rudolph came in, didn't look good when he came in either. So. I think Pittsburgh, you kind of have to give up the season at this point. Now, it's interesting because it doesn't seem like the front office is, because they just traded away their first-round draft pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, which now, looking at it, in turn, could end up as a top 10 pick. We know Miami is going to have the number 1 pick. There's no secret about what Miami's strategy this season is. It's to lose and lose by as many as possible. My boy Fitzmagic just getting set up for failure down there in Miami because there is zero effort on behalf of the Miami Dolphins to do anything remotely close to football right now. So they're going to have the number 1 pick and what appears to be a top 10 pick, and we were just talking about this before it goes on the air, and they also have Houston's pick this year as well. So Miami is no qualms about going for draft picks only. the move is perplexing for Steelers fans because you just gave up a first round pick, which could have been used to draft a successor to Ben Roethlisberger, because it doesn't look like Mason Rudolph, at least right now. No, we have a half game sample size. Doesn't look like they're sold on him, though. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think at this point, we talked about last week, they're 0-2. They're down 2 games in the division to what looks like a very, very good Ravens team. And the Browns rebounded pretty well. Like, at this point, we talked about earlier, our NFL preview show, we talked about this being a 3-team race in the AFC North, where, the Bengals were the team that was going to lag behind, and the other 3 were going to be kind of fighting it out for who wins the division and then possibly a wild card seed. I don't think at this point that you can put the Pittsburgh Steelers in contention for the wild card. I think there's no way they win the division. I don't think they get to even like a 9-7 where they can win a wild card. So. So back to the original question, which team is less likely to make the playoffs, or will either team make the playoffs? I think that Pittsburgh has no chance at making the playoffs. The Saints, however, I think have a decent shot with Teddy Bridgewater, obviously with their offense and the way it's designed, and the fact that Drew Brees is likely coming back at some point during the season. If they can get him back by week 8 or week 9, then that's something that vastly improves their ability to make the playoffs.
So I feel like the trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick was a bit of a desperation move by Pittsburgh, trying to keep themselves, because Pittsburgh's never in a situation where let's rebuild. They're always in a win now, go for it, win now mentality. But
they're not in a tank. They're not in tank mode.
No, they never will.
I think it's for optics. I think a little bit of it is for optics. Like, hey, look, we're still fighting. And Minkah Fitzpatrick's a good corner, and he makes them a better football team. But unfortunately, their offense probably isn't going to be able to go anywhere with Mason Rudolph. Lost Antonio Brown, lost Le'Veon Bell. Like, they just don't have the weapons, and now they don't have the quarterback running the show behind the offensive line. It makes it infinitely more difficult for them.
And James Conner was banged up in the loss to Seattle too. So maybe it gives some carries for Benny Snell. They gave it to him one time in that game against Seattle, and he ran for 24 yards.
Yeah, a little confusing.
His only carry, though.
Why we, again, we thought Benny Snell was going to be a good NFL player, and he still will be, but it's not using them as effectively as they probably should be.
On the other side, with the Saints, as long as Teddy Bridgewater and their defense can hold down the fort, I think New Orleans is going to have to change the way they play a little bit. I think they're going to have to go a little bit more. Let's not necessarily be as aggressive offensively, and let's rely on our defense to keep us in ball games. And I think with New Orleans, if you can keep the ship around 500 for the next 6 to 8 weeks, or however long Breeze is going to be out, if you can keep it around 500, you're right there as far as playoff contention goes. You have a division that is not very good. You have punch face squared, and so you figure those are winnable games.
Yeah, those 2 teams, especially looking after their first 2-week performances, and we're going to talk about one of the punch faces here in a little bit. They don't look to be in contention. So you're really dealing with the Atlanta Falcons, who look good.
They're a Jekyll and Hyde team. You never know what they're going to get from the Falcons week to week.
Yeah, they look good at times, but right now it's going to be interesting to see where the Falcons go. So I think they still have the ability to win the division. And again, getting Drew Brees back at some point in the season makes a big difference. Big Ben being out for the season is a lot different than Drew Brees being out for 6 games. And again, if they can make it even to their bye week before they play the Falcons and get Drew Brees back, because looking at the schedule, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 games. If he misses 6 games, he would also have the bye week, so he would really only need to be back 8 weeks from now to play right immediately after the bye week. And if they can go 3-3 in those games and be 4-4 when he comes back from the bye week and win 6 of their last 8, then I think 10-6 wins the division, and I think it easily gets them into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think if you're Sean Payton, you need to try and make Teddy Bridgewater a little bit more of a game manager. And the other reason why you look at both of these rosters, New Orleans is set up the way their roster is built, and all the pieces they have, both offensively and defensively, they can sustain a loss like Drew Brees. I'm not saying it's going to be, they're not going to just the beat goes on, because obviously you can't replace one of the greatest of all time. But you look at their roster compared to Pittsburgh's. I mean, you talked about the Pittsburgh losses. James Conner being banged up. Do they have a number 2 receiver behind Juju? the defense has not been very good for the last several years, and I just saw the Steelers fire off a tweet, or somebody fired off a tweet about Pittsburgh saying now with the Fitzpatrick trade, they have 8 first-round draft picks that are starting on defense.
Yeah.
And you still can't, and you're still giving up points left. You gave up 33 to New England and 28 to Seattle. So
you're no longer the steel curtain of old, especially with 8 first-round draft picks. You think they would be a little stouter on defense, but yeah, it's again, like you mentioned. I think the Saints have the weapons around Teddy Bridgewater, and now they mentioned they're going to go with a 2-quarterback system with Taysom Hill, who already played a lot anyway.
He's playing everywhere.
He's a receiver. He plays at quarterback. He does wildcat stuff. He plays on the punt team. He returns kickoffs. Like, Taysom Hill's all the way on the field anyway, but it just gives them another element. And obviously, Teddy Bridgewater's more mobile than Drew Brees, but they still have Alvin Kamara toting the rock. And they still have Michael Thomas as their number 1 receiver. Ted Ginn Jr., Jared Cook, Taquan Smith. Like, they don't have a bad offense that's going to be surrounding Teddy Bridgewater. And again, Sean Payton, I'll give Sean Payton credit. Like, he's a very sound offensive mind and a very good football coach. Like, he's going to build, like you mentioned, make Teddy Bridgewater more of a game manager because of the weapons around him. I like him adjusting to the loss of their quarterback more than I like Mike Tomlin and the way he'll adjust to the loss of Ben Roethlisberger, because we both agree that Mike Tomlin is probably a little bit of an overrated head coach in the long run. He thinks he's severely overrated, but I just trust Sean Payton and his staff to make this transition a lot easier than the Steelers will.
Somebody else is in transition now, and boy, was this a happy day here at Fumblegate when we learned of this.
Oh, goodness.
Bye, Eli.
Ooh,
the Giants
boy.
finally.
Eli's fault.
The Giants have finally done what should have happened probably 4 years ago and have sent Eli Manning to the bench.
Definitely should have.
I know. They should have sent him to the bench 4 years ago. They didn't, but now they finally have. It's Daniel Jones' team, and now we get to see who you accurately called they would take with the 6th pick of the draft. He was very good in the preseason. Now, you kind of take the preseason with a grain of salt, but he only threw like 6 incomplete passes the entire preseason.
He looked good. He silenced a few of the doubters back then. Now we're going to find out. Now it's live. You
have such a weapon in Saquon Barkley. And that's what a lot of Giants fans are thinking. Crack one open. Why do you continue to leave Eli in there to languish and flounder when you have a weapon like Saquon Barkley? Why not go ahead and put Jones in there to start building that together? Now, you don't have much at receiver. Sterling Shepard is not healthy, so you got to address that either in the draft or in free agency next season. But you have to get this started with Daniel Jones. So now, assuming this sticks, and you wonder in New York, if Daniel Jones goes out and just sucks, stinks it up, how quickly does Pat Shurmur go back to Eli? Go back to Eli Manning.
Well, and we saw it the last time they benched Eli for a game, and back in 2017 they sat Eli down. Was it week 10 or something like that? They sat him down, broke his consecutive game streak, and he,
Geno Smith or something?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but whoever it was went in, they sucked, and they went right back to Eli. I think that's going to be a similar case. The Giants aren't going to be very good this year.
No.
We knew they wouldn't be very good. Again, partly because they've been hanging on to Eli for so long. That has been one of their downfalls as a franchise, is they've been holding on to Eli Manning. Since they won their Super Bowl in 2011, their record's 47-65. They had one good season in 2016. They were 11-5. That season, Eli threw for 26 touchdowns, 251 yards per game. But since they've won their Super Bowl, they've been almost 20 games below 500 with Eli Manning as their starting quarterback. It's just they've been hanging on to this dream that he would return to the few good seasons they had. Since the Super Bowl season, again, 9-7, 9-7, 7-9, 6-10, 6-10. The anomaly is the 11-5 season in 2016, but then 3-12 and 5-11, or 3-13, then 5-11. Like, what are you hanging on to? What dream are you? You don't owe Eli Manning anything.
This is the same as the Lakers giving Kobe Bryant a 2-year, $45 million contract at the end of his career as a lifetime achievement award.
You don't owe
Except
him anything.
Worse.
Like this is a win now league, and as a head coach, as Pat Shurmur as a head coach, like Eli Manning is no longer the guy, and for some people that's hard to accept, and I get it. It's but he's not your guy anymore. Like he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he's going to be one of the worst Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Second worst.
Yeah, well, one of the worst. No matter how you cut it, one of the worst.
Second worst.
Making the Hall of Fame.
And the other one played in New York.
But again, you just look at what he did. In the years he was good, but he has so many average or below average years. In fact, there's an article that I was taking a peek at that the title of the article is Eli Manning is an all-time average QB.
538.com. Check it out.
Yeah, it's valid, and you read the article and it makes a lot of great points. He's 116 and 116 for career record. His career record is literally 500, like average, like. You look at his numbers. The 2 seasons they won the Super Bowls, he was 8-0 in those postseasons. Didn't lose a postseason game. The other 4 years that he's made the playoffs, 0-4. So the only years that he won playoff games were the years that they won the Super Bowls. Every other season, 0-4.
You look at his numbers throughout his career, and every year that he's had a full year, he's thrown at least 10 picks.
Yeah, like
every single year. What's his starting record?
116 and 116, like literally average. Like
okay, so what do you do with him? What do the Giants do with him?
Let him languish on the bench. Like I don't think you can trade him. I don't think anybody's willing to pay a $10 million salary to a guy who's 38 years old and is an average quarterback.
He also does have a no trade.
He's got a full no trade clause. Yeah. But anyway, I don't think anybody's beating down the door for a guy who's making $10.5 million this year and is average. Like nobody's beating down the door for that. No. So I think he languishes on the bench. And then you got to cut him loose. Like at this point, there needs to be a discussion between Eli and ownership. Like, listen, your time has come. We're going to send you out to pasture. We'll do it however you want in front of the media. We can, do the ceremony. We can do all that crap. We can build you a freaking statue because they'll probably do that anyway.
But, it's not like the Colts did with Peyton Manning when they said goodbye to him.
We'll build you a little statue, but we'll do it the right way, and off you go on the greener pastures. Go do your endorsement stuff. You're still a Manning and you're marginally funny. Not quite as funny as your brother, but you're marginally funny. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him post football. But at this point, the ship has sailed. Like he's no longer a good quarterback in the NFL. I don't know that he's ever been a good quarterback. He's been an average quarterback. Again, 538.com, great article about it. A lifetime average quarterback. That's it. I mean, and again, here's back to the question of if Daniel Jones sucks it up. I don't think you go back. In my opinion, I don't think you do go back because this year's lost. Like you're at this point, you've accepted that you are not going to make the playoffs this year. We knew that was going to be a long shot anyway, but at this point with Daniel Jones, you've accepted that you will not. So chalk this up as a learning curve for Daniel Jones. He has 14 games to learn how to play NFL quarterback. And then hopefully next year you come out of the gates firing with a guy who's got 14 games experience. Now he's going to get beat up a little bit just because that's the nature of the game. As a rookie, you're going to get beat up a little bit. But give him 14 games so when he starts game 1 of next year, he has 14 games experience rather than, give him a game now, Eli comes back in because he sucks, and the guy's got 1 NFL experience start. They move on from Eli after the season, and then Daniel Jones is coming in with, throwing 30 NFL passes. No, I think you give him all 14 games. I think you let him play it out. Save him being just unremarkably terrible. Unless he just starts going out and starts throwing picks like punch face. Like, you need to stick with him for the 14 games. Just let him get the experience. Let him have some success. Let him learn the speed of the NFL game because preseason isn't the same, and we all know that. I think you got to let him have all 14 unless it's just remarkably awful. You got to let him play.
Have somebody for the Giants just leak to the media. It's total BS. You called the Jets and to see if there was any interest in Eli Manning because I would love to see the New York
melt down.
The national New York and national media just completely face melt.
Oh yeah,
and then to see
the New York Times headlines would be great.
The New York Post, and then they'll Photoshop Eli in a Jets jersey. That would be hilarious.
People would go nuts for that.
I tell you one thing I would do if I was the Giants, and not saying it's going to go anywhere. If you want to do something with Eli and maybe get something for him other than just cutting him loose, or just letting him pay him $10 million to be your number 2 quarterback, call the Minnesota Vikings. See if there's any interest. Not saying there will be. Maybe you can get a set. Maybe they would take a flyer on Eli as a 7th rounder because Kirk Cousins sucks.
Yeah,
and they have a team that's in a win now mode too. You have Dalvin Cook who's looking like every bit of a top flight running back in the league. We know Mike Zimmer can coach defense, but Kirk Cousins just cannot
does not appear to be the answer.
He cannot stop turning the football over. And I know Eli has been very guilty of that in his career.
Yeah, he's very good at turning the ball over.
This is a team in Minnesota that has aspirations of a deep playoff run, has the talent to do it. But when you have a guy in Kirk Cousins, who I know they paid a lot of money to, but he keeps shooting your team in the foot week after week, game after game, play after play, why not call Minnesota and see, hey, would you give us a 7th rounder for Eli Manning?
Yeah, because at this point you might as well try and get something out of him because, again, I think that this is the year they have to move on and just give up on him for nothing, just send him off to pasture. So if there's a team out there willing to trade, and again, because of the full no trade clause, you're going to have to convince him to take the trade. Absolutely. If that's the case. But again, you got to do something to try and move on and get something out of him. If Daniel Jones is truly the guy, then Eli Manning's just wasted money. You got to try and find some way to alleviate some of that $10.5 million if you can.
Speaking of wasted money, there's a couple of other guys that are still being paid way more than they should, and that's Joe Flacco and Cam Newton. And
still in the prime of his career, though.
Which one?
Joe Flacco, of course.
Oh, yeah.
John Elway said he's still in the prime of his career.
Okay, both of them stink. And both of their teams currently stink right now. And you just wonder at what point are they both going to look to the next generation. Now Elway's already failed at this once when he drafted Paxton. I know.
Elway's failed repeatedly.
I know. But when he drafted Paxton Lynch in the first round a few years ago, and Paxton Lynch just now signed to Pittsburgh's practice squad.
Back in the league.
Right on.
That cup of coffee.
Cam Newton, Carolina's going to have to face a harsh reality that he is not the guy that he once was. He's turnover prone, number one. Number two, he is getting hurt a lot.
Yeah, and he looks disinterested. Like he just doesn't look excited to play anymore. And that's Andrew Luck has now given the blueprint for something like this to happen. Mm-hmm. And looking at Cam Newton on the surface, it appears that he is headed in that same direction as Andrew Luck. He looks like he's not having fun anymore. He seems disinterested. He doesn't seem excited to be there. He's not playing with the same vigor. He's obviously sick of getting hit. He's been hit a lot in his career. He's been sacked. Where did I put it? I put it in there somewhere. Sacked, I believe it's 291 times over his career. Like he's been hit a lot. So it's what do you do with a guy who's disinterested in a franchise who at one point looked like this was the quarterback of the future, but recently has just become unassuming, unexciting, not the guy that they thought he was going to be over in the long run. Like he's taken a step back, and you look at where they've started already, 0-2.
Well, look at both of them.
He hasn't thrown a touchdown pass yet this season. Like, just what do you do? Again, the question becomes, when is it time to move on? And I think Cam Newton, again, if I had to guess, I would say Cam Newton is moving towards that Andrew Luck type exit where it's just not going to be fun for him anymore. He's taking a beating. Part of it because of the way he plays, and part of it, again, because they don't protect him very well. Offensive line play in Carolina has not necessarily
been dropping.
Yeah, not necessarily been a strong point for them. They've given up 6 sacks already this season, so they're on pace to give up 48 this season. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I've never been sold on Cam Newton, and I did some number crunching. If you take out the 3 winning seasons that he's had as a starting quarterback in the last 9, he was 38-10 in those 3 winning seasons, including the 15-1 season where they went to the Super Bowl.
And he was the MVP.
And again, looked largely disinterested in that season. If you take away those 3 winning seasons, he's got a 30-45 record. Like, very unassuming, not very exciting. And again, one of those seasons is a 15-win season, and they looked really good that season, but then they bounced back with a 6-8 season. So it's like, what do you do with a guy who's averages 232 yards per game and only 7.2 yards per attempt? What do you do with those guys? He's electrifying and he's exciting and he's fun to watch when he wants to be there, but right now he doesn't look like it. So, what's the answer? What do you do with him?
Next year is possibly his last year in Carolina. He's only under contract through next year. However, he has, as of right now, he has no more guaranteed money coming to him. So they could cut him loose after this season. But at what point does Ron Rivera finally decide I've got to move on? You've got a special running back in Christian McCaffrey who can do everything for you.
An everything guy. You have an everything guy.
And it's kind of similar to what we're talking about with the Giants. You have a very special running back, but you have a quarterback alongside him who continues to kind of hinder what you could possibly have with him. Yeah. And on the other side, Denver can't score. And we knew this was going to happen. They're averaging 15 points a game. Flacco is, as usual, averaging under 7 yards per attempt in Denver. That's
his career average, though.
Right.
Nothing should surprise you about that. We know that Flacco lives on checkdowns.
Yes.
He lives on underneath routes and checkdowns. Flacco's not throwing the deep ball. And to a little bit of his credit, he hasn't exactly had burners his entire career, but even when he does, it's either an overthrow or a severe underthrow or end up being a check down. So it's like, why are we surprised by what Joe Flacco is doing? I'm more surprised by Cam Newton. As much as I dislike Cam Newton, he's a talented person. He's got arm strength. He's got all the other intangibles. Joe Flacco, we've known, has been a marginal quarterback. Again, he's never been great. They win a Super Bowl in spite of him.
That year during the playoffs, he was also on a contract year.
Yeah, but
he played very well.
Yeah, and he signed the biggest contract in the history of football at the time. And
yes, he did.
Better timing there has not ever been.
But you look at Denver this year.
We know he's been an average quarterback.
Denver traded back in the draft and selected a tight end.
Yeah.
That should tell you right there where they were what they were thinking with Flacco.
They thought Flacco was good.
Yeah,
just entering his prime, and he's going to be the franchise quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years. And they were looking for a window to find a new quarterback down the road. But I think at this point, at 0-2 and 15 points per game, and he's averaging 200 and something yards per game. What do you do with him? It's time. It's time to move on.
Carolina to me needs to seriously look at this in the draft next season. And I'm talking first round here. Denver, I think John Elway's going to give Flacco one more year because John Elway's ego will not allow him to admit that the Joe Flacco trade was a failure.
But again, we know that John Elway, hell of a player, not a very good front office guy.
And the Bolin family is still trying to decide who has ownership of the family ever since Mr. Bolin passed away. So you wonder how much they're actually keeping an eye on what Elway is doing.
Yeah, they're worried about their own legal battles, and John Elway is. They've given him a lot of free reign, and he hasn't made great decisions yet.
No.
So it's
like we talked about before. He drafted Von Miller, and he signed Peyton Manning. What else has he done?
Nothing. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, but again.
Oh, he drafted Tim Tebow. That's right. Forgot about that.
And Paxton Lynch.
Sorry. But then Tim Tebow doesn't feel like college kids should get paid because he didn't get paid.
Yeah, by the way, Tim Tebow, that's a terrible take. You're an idiot. Shut your mouth. Pay the college kids. Now, I don't like the theory of just letting them get money paid on their own accord. The NCAA should be paying them. But shut your mouth, Tim Tebow.
Okay. Game picks this week. Three. We'll take a look.
Wait, time out. One last stat.
Okay.
So we've talked about all these bad quarterbacks here after Drew Brees and Big Ben. I just want to go through the active passer rating leaders.
Go ahead.
The current active leaders. You have to go all the quarterbacks we just talked about. You have to go all the way to 21 to find the highest of the group we just talked about. 21. Now, there's only 27 on this list because 5 of them are rookies or guys who don't have enough stats to have career passer ratings. 21st active quarterback, Cam Newton. We got a guy named Case Keenum. Joe Flacco comes in at 23. Peyton Manning comes in at 24. I'm sorry. Eli Manning, hashtag Eli's fault, comes in at 24. The only 4 quarterbacks rated lower than the 3 guys we just talked about are Blake Bortles, who we all know is terrible, who's hanging on and may get a Super Bowl ring by hanging out in L.A. and holding a clipboard. Fitzmagic, who, unsurprisingly, we love Fitzmagic.
Sorry.
We love the beard. It's majestical, but he, as a career quarterback, not great.
No.
McCown,
Josh McCown.
Josh McCown. I almost said Cade McCown because there's a
That's
Cade
McNown.
McNown, whatever. Josh McCown. And Chad Henne, who apparently is still actively holding a clipboard somewhere. I'm not sure where. I didn't even look it up. So, guys, we have Cam Newton, who, again, almost won a Super Bowl. Case Keenum, Joe Flacco, who possibly could get in the Hall of Fame, and Peyton Manning, who will be in the Hall of Fame.
Eli.
I keep saying Peyton. Man, CTE. Just the active leader list, those three guys that being on the bottom and the bottom 8, and again with names like Blake Bortles and Chad Henne and Case Keenum, not very good company to be keeping. So it just, interesting to see as these teams move on from those quarterbacks, whether it be forced or otherwise. Like I said, we're going to see a lot of new faces under center in the next couple of years with the age of the aging quarterbacks, and as players, again, I think Cam Newton may be headed for a Andrew Luck situation. It's just going to see a lot of new quarterbacks under center. But anyway, let's pick some games.
Let's talk about two good quarterbacks here, at least through a couple of weeks.
Right now, they look pretty good. And
Pat Mahomes is just on his way to another MVP. The way he keeps going, and then I really, really hate saying it, but at least through a couple of weeks, I have to give John Harbaugh credit. He's made Lamar Jackson look pretty good.
Turns out Lamar Jackson's pretty good. And not that we didn't know he was talented, but there was a question with changing the style of offense, obviously getting away from Joe Flacco with just 6-yard check down routes. A guy like
never understood why defense against Flacco wouldn't just play like a 4-5-2, 5 linebackers.
Yeah, I would just play nickel all day and keep everything underneath me if I was playing against Joe Flacco.
Anyway, Baltimore and Kansas City here. This is one of the marquee games this weekend.
And it's a matchup of two really good teams, and we didn't necessarily know where Baltimore was going to be with Lamar Jackson because it's kind of a small sample size, and the way the NFL typically works is teams start to figure out what you're doing, and being fresh and new works for a time, but then defensive coordinators get more film and they get to see what's happening, and they start to game plan a little bit better for quarterbacks that are mobile like a Lamar Jackson. But they look really good this year, and to be honest with you, this one it's a tough pick this early on. Like early on, I thought Kansas City win this game. Like Kansas City's got a chance to be 14-2 or whatever. But the way Baltimore's playing, I don't know if you can just chalk this one up as an easy win for Kansas City. I think this is going to be a fight. I think it's going to be a lot of points. I think I picked the over in this one. I still got Kansas City winning because it's in Arrowhead and it's not a playoff game. So in Arrowhead, when it's not a playoff game, I give them a little bit of better odds.
Yeah.
But I think this game is going to be a nice, close game. It's going to be probably the most exciting one to watch on Sunday. There's going to be points scored, and there's going to be two really, really good NFL quarterbacks slinging against each other. And just some of the stuff they do is stuff that you don't see a lot of other guys able to do. So there's we know that there could be a no-look pass in there, or who knows, he starts throwing it left-handed again or whatever. Pat Mahomes, that is. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun one to watch. I think this is again the marquee matchup of two teams with electric offenses going at each other in Kansas City. But I got the Chiefs winning this one.
I had the Chiefs winning this one too. I like doing scores, as you know here in Fumblegate. He doesn't like to do it because he likes to be vague.
Vague as possible, so it's harder to be wrong.
I have Kansas City winning 28-19, and I think this is a potential situation where this is going to be a really close game, and you could see these two teams meeting up again in January.
Yeah, this could end up being a rematch game.
It'll be entertaining because it'll be even after Baltimore wins in Kansas City in January, because we know the Chiefs. we know the Chiefs play.
Wait for next year for the rubber match.
There you go. Okay, so that's that one. Now the last two games here, we're going to move on to America's new favorite game.
Yeah.
Will they cover?
Yeah, Vegas odd makers are loving these two teams.
These are great. The Dallas Cowboys taking on the Miami Dolphins at home, and the Dallas Cowboys are 22-point favorites.
Well, to be fair, they only opened at 20.5, so it's gone up 1.5 points since
they cover?
Yes, they will 100% cover. Again, we mentioned the Dolphins are not shy about the fact that they are putting zero effort into the season. Like, Nothing against my boy Fitzmagic, but they called a timeout with 4 seconds left in the game to throw another interception. Like, it's just, Fitzmagic's on pace for like negative 300 fantasy football points this year.
Josh Rosen's not far behind.
But it's just like, unfortunately, just Miami, no secret about they want nothing to do with being on the field. Most of the guys at this point have resigned themselves to just picking up their paychecks on Monday. Yeah, I think Dallas covers. I think, again, Dallas is trying to prove a point. Dak Prescott's trying to get paid. Dallas is going to go out there all firing on all cylinders, and I think they easily cover. And again, Miami was only getting, I believe it was 14 when they played New England, and that wasn't even close. I think same thing. I'm not sure if Miami does more than kick a couple field goals in this one. I think Dallas scores plenty of points to cover that 22.
Dallas wins 44-13.
There you go. The next couple field goals, and you got an actual touchdown in there.
Something will happen.
I'm not sure if they get an actual touchdown.
Dallas will put in their practice squad defense in the fourth quarter. Second portion of Will They Cover? The New York Jets. They're playing third stringer Luke Falk.
Hey, Luke Falk, who we love, by the way, which, again, gets more golden quotes and retweets from Mike Leach.
And Mike Leach.
Mike Leach gets a lot more time on TV, and he gets a few more retweets on the social media. By the way, if you don't follow him, Coach_Leach, follow him on Twitter. It's a great follow.
They did ask Adam Gase this week, have you ever been an underdog this big? His response was fantastic, which kind of he understands the situation. He said, I coached in Detroit for 5 years, so he gets it. But you have one of your better defensive players, Jamal Adams. He wants out. He's all ticked off because he got benched against Cleveland. Yeah. And then you have an offense that can't score. You have Le'Veon Bell, but what does it matter when you have nobody to throw the ball to him?
Well, they're not shy about giving him carries. They've been giving him plenty of carries
and receptions.
They're not blocking very well for him. Like, you can have an electric guy, but if you're getting 26 touches for 46 yards, you're not exactly using him effectively.
New England wins 37-3, by the way. So Adam Kieft, will they cover?
Yes, they cover, and I don't give you scores, but the Jets are going to have a hard time getting even into field goal range in this one with Luke Falk. And I like Luke Falk, and he was a really good quarterback for Mike Leach up there for the Cougs.
No win situation.
It doesn't matter.
No-win situation.
You were a third string guy 2 weeks ago. Last week you were the backup, and now you're the starter. And he's the starter for the foreseeable future because we mentioned
we don't know when Darnold's coming back because he's got mono, and Trevor Siemian tore ligaments in his ankle. He's done.
Trevor Siemian's done for the year, and Darnold is with mono. It could be up to another month once he feels good and for those of you who don't know, the danger with mono is that you can rupture your spleen and then concurrently die. So they're very cautious with stuff like that. Anytime you hear potential for death, you're going to be extra cautious, particularly for a bad football team and a quarterback who's going to take a lot of hits. You don't want him bursting his spleen and dying on the field. That's not a good look up there in New York. So
okay, so
Dallas, they cover too.
This has been America's new favorite game of will they cover? And Dallas and New England will cover.
Vegas is playing this game every week, and they hate it because they started with 2 touchdowns. First of all, when's the last time you saw 2 touchdown spreads in the NFL?
3.
Now we're at 3 touchdown spreads, and they may continue to go up from here. We'll see. And the bettors are agreeing that they will continue to go up because I think one of these games opened at 20, the other one at 20.5. Yeah. So people are betting the winning team even with that many points. So it's going to continue to rise as the season goes on.
Assume that right now, as we're live here, and it's not even 8:00 in the morning out in Vegas, odds makers are at the bar right now trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, trying to figure out how do we get these points right so we're not losing our ass on people betting 22-point spreads.
But it's Vegas; they'll figure it out because they always do.
Somehow they do.
Okay, so with that, we got to move. We got to put the NFL behind us here now, and we're going to move into the discussion on college football. And what better way to do that this week than with Adam Kieft, Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week? And I would just sit back because this is going to take a while.
Yeah, there's a few of them in here. So we'll start from the bottom up just because this is fun. So before we went to bed on Saturday night, I texted Jason, let him know VMI's kicker had already missed 2 in the game, but they were from 46 and 54, so I wasn't really too worried about it. Obviously, being a military kid, too. We don't like picking military kids unless it's glaring. But at the end of the game, we kept the eye on the game, but the other kicker came through to finish this one off. The East Tennessee State Buccaneers, Tyler Keltner, missed from 40 with 2 minutes left in the game. After that, VMI drives the length of the field to make a 30-yard field goal to tie it. And they end up losing in overtime to the VMI Keydets. by the way, good name for a military school, the Keydets. Albany Dylan Burns missed from 39 in overtime. They lose in overtime 38-35 to Monmouth. Nicholas College, Alex Santiago misses the extra point in overtime, so they score what would be the game-tying touchdown against the Coast Guard, 24-23. All you got to do is kick the extra point. Let's go to overtime number 2, but Alex Santiago misses that. Georgia Tech's Brenton King misses from 46 in overtime. Their other kicker, who uses 2 kickers in the college game, but this is what they do. Wesley Wells misses the extra point in regulation. They go to overtime with the Citadel, missed the 46-yarder that would have tied it up in overtime. To take to the tie to go into the second overtime, Citadel gets a win over the Georgia Tech Ramblin' Wreck. Kentucky's this one. You love this one, and this is a bad luck for Kentucky.
You bastard.
Chance Poore misses from 35 at the end, near the end of regulation. Now they end up losing 29-21, which is stupid by the Florida kid, by the way. Kentucky trying to get a stop on third down, and the kid takes it all the way to the house. Actually gives Kentucky a better chance because now they're still only down a score. But they should have the lead, but Chance Poore decided, but great kicker name, by the way, decided to miss from 35.
That's an all-time kicker name.
All-time kicker name. Him and what's the other kickers? Blewett.
The guy from Pitt.
Yeah, the guy from Pitt named Blewett. That was a good one, too. But, yeah, Chance Poore, not a great kicker name. Ohio's Louis Zervos misses from 43. They end up losing to Marshall 33-31. They lose by 2. Alcorn State's Corey McCullough, a repeat offender. He's been on the show before.
The greatest
misser of all time. 1 of 7.
1 for 7.
Yeah, 1 for 7
last year.
Repeat appearance. Corey McCullough still hasn't quite figured it out. He's 2 of 6 on the season. He's a career 60% field goal kicker, yet they still keep riding with him. He misses from 44, 49, and an extra point. They end up losing to McNeese State 17-14. Again, he's 2 of 6 on the season. Abilene Christian's Blair Zepeda, also a repeat offender. He's been on the show before. He left it short from 46 at the end of regulation to lose 31-30 against Central Arkansas.
Short?
Leaving it short from 46. South Dakota's Mason Lorber, again, a repeat offender. He's been on the show before. He missed from 33 and had an extra point block. They end up losing to Houston Baptist 53-52.
And once again,
field goal and an extra point.
You put it on the kicker for having an extra point block there.
Yeah, it's too low. We had one blocked in our high school game, and guess what? He kicked it right in the back of the head of my tackle. So whose fault is that? Is that the tackle's fault, or is he kicked it in the back of the guy's head? Like, if you kick it straight into the defense, then yeah, that's your fault. Sorry. Extra point. Like, all you got to do is chip shot that shit over the line of scrimmage. It's not that hard.
What was your reaction when it happened?
I was like, what the hell happened? And they were like, oh, it came right up the middle. And then I watched it on film. We got replay on the sidelines now, which is insane to me. We were talking about the technology of it the other day. In the NFL, we used to, even when I was in the NFL, we used to look at stuff on paper. Like, we didn't even have the live replay on paper. Now, high school, we have sideline review. On the sideline, we can watch the video of the play that just happened on the sideline in a high school game, which is crazy to me. I mean, 14 years ago, the NFL was still using paper. And now high school games are watching live replays on the sideline.
So are you just basically having to tell your guys up front, don't worry about it, our kicker sucks?
Yeah. It was a game I don't know if I mentioned it. It was a 62-13 win for us. So missing the extra point.
Points a point.
Yeah, points a point. And we actually tied the school record for points in the game. So the extra point did make the difference. Thanks a lot, dumb kickers. Anyway, this week's winner. This is a good one, and I mentioned to Jason, keep an eye on it as the game was coming down. There was 2 minutes left in the game. I believe Arizona State converted a 4th and 8 to go in for to take the lead. They were down 7-3. I believe they converted a 4th and 8 to score to go up 10-7.
What a freaking snoozer, by the way.
Yeah. Well, not if you're a Michigan State fan. They had 450 yards of total offense, but they only ended up scoring 10 points. Why? 7.
7.
One reason why is because Michigan State kicker Matt Coughlin missed from 47 in the first half, 31 to end the first half, right at the end of the second quarter. And then in overtime, after ASU scores to go up 10-7, Michigan State drives down the field, line up for a 42-yard field goal. He makes it. Problem is, there's 12 guys on the field.
How do you do that?
Guess what?
How does that happen? Isn't that the kicker's job to count the number of guys on the field?
It is the holder's job, but it's also the special teams coach's job before they leave the sideline. Now in the NFL, in college football, I'm sure a majority of those guys are coming off the sideline. So somebody at some point either stayed on that wasn't supposed to, or too many people ran out onto the field during the exchange to get it. Anyway, Makes it from 42, but it doesn't count because there was 12 guys on the field. So they line up for a 47-yarder. Now, keep in mind, he already missed a 47-yarder in the first half, but well within his range because most kickers should be able to make from within inside 47 if you're a scholarship NCAA kicker. But he goes up there and he chokes big time. Makes it from 42, misses from 47, missed 3 field goals on the game, 9 points left on the board. They lose the Arizona State Sun Devils 10-7. And for that reason, Matt Coughlin, pride of Moeller High School here in Cincinnati.
Let's go, Big Mo.
Yep, you are this week's winner of the Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week.
10-7.
10-7, yeah, kind of a snoozer. And by the way, all you Michigan State fans complaining about them not calling the leaping penalty or the perceived leaping penalty.
Well, it was
on
admitted
the final
after the game that should have been called.
But who cares? Make the field goal. It doesn't matter.
You're right.
Don't be a dummy.
You. No, I'm with
make
you.
one of your 3 field goals, including your 31-yarder, which is just outside trained monkey range to end the first half. Like, you're an idiot. Sorry, Matt Coughlin, you're a bad kicker, and you win this week's trophy. Fumblegate Fatty Kicker of the Week.
That's pretty
dummy.
Simple. Thanks to a Nintendo Switch guy for dropping his comment in the chat saying that Cam Newton is done.
Yeah, he probably is. Like again. I mentioned. I think we could see him in the Andrew Luck. I think that's the way that's moving. Andrew Luck laid the groundwork for players being able to do that. I think that's probably where Cam Newton's headed.
Okay. College football time now, and things to really starting to ramp up. There really weren't a whole lot of big games last week, which was there were no games between 2 ranked teams, which kind of sucks for the 3rd week of the season.
Yeah, but unsurprisingly, that's we know that cupcakes are on the schedule a lot in the 3rd week of the season, similar to week 11. There's just Week 11 is hard to pick good games because there's a lot of cupcakes on the schedule because teams don't like losing early, and you certainly can't lose late. So that's why we didn't get a lot of great matchups in week 3, but we got a lot of good ones this week.
It picks up this week. There are a lot of big games this week, and we'll talk about 3 of them here in just a bit and give you picks on each of those. But first, teams still trying to position themselves for the college football playoff, trying to get into the conversation, trying to stay in the conversation, trying to keep themselves at the top, what have you. Who has to win this week to keep their playoff hopes alive? Who's on the outside looking in?
Oh, I don't know if they're on the outside looking in right now, but the team that has to win this week is Notre Dame. Notre Dame has no other choice. If they lose this game, Notre Dame's college football playoff hopes are finished. And here's why. Because now this is all assumption and this is all based on players staying healthy. Chances are we are getting no worse than one-loss team out of the SEC. Clemson has no speed bumps left on their schedule.
They have no ranked teams left.
Oklahoma's only speed bump they probably have left is probably going to be Texas because the Red River Shootout here on the 12th. But we have to assume at this point, the way the Big Ten looks, that Ohio State will also be undefeated. So you really cannot argue at this point. You're not going to be able to argue for a one-loss Notre Dame team to make it into the playoffs over 3 undefeated teams. And if a SEC team has 1 loss, you cannot include them over a one-loss Notre Dame team is not making it over a 1-loss Notre Dame team. Unless it happens to
You just a 1-loss Notre Dame team is not
one-loss Notre Dame team is not making it over a 1-loss SEC team.
We playing the video game?
I'm sorry.
Same team against same team?
Unless it happens to be a rematch situation of this game.
Yeah.
Unless for some reason Notre Dame beats Georgia and Georgia happens to be a 1-loss Georgia team late in the season, that's the only way I foresee that they could leap a 1-loss SEC school back into the playoff. So for me, if Notre Dame loses this week, they're out because they aren't going to have a lot of marquee games left. They only have 2 ranked opponents left. Virginia at home, and I think Virginia is severely overrated at 21. I think they end up outside the top 25 anyway. Michigan, who severely overrated, they will probably end the season outside the top 25. Now, they probably won't because pollsters love to put Michigan in the top 25.
They'll finish in the top 20.
And they'll start next year in the top 10 again, like they always do. But, yeah, if Notre Dame can't go down to Georgia, down to Sanford Stadium and win between the hedges, their chance at the college football playoff is severely diminished to the point where they're going to have to count on a lot of other teams losing 1 and probably 2 games for them to get back in the playoff, particularly with the snoozer they put up last time they were in the playoff. They're going to have a hard time at face value convincing the committee to put them in the playoff at 1 loss.
I'm going to go a little more of the safe route here, and I'm going to head out west. The only shot the Pac-12 has right now at the playoff is Utah, and they've got to win this week. They're at USC. USC's a little better than it. Yet Graham Harrell with the run and shoot offense, so they're putting up points. But Utah, they've got to keep the ball rolling. They have to run the table. They have to win the Pac-12.
Well, we know the Pac-12
game.
has to have an undefeated team for them to even have a shot.
That's what I'm saying.
If there's not an undefeated team coming out of the Pac-12, you're never going to get in the playoff.
You look at their schedule. The toughest road game they have left is the beginning of November when they go to Washington, and Washington just lost at home last week to Cal in a stinker of a performance. But you look at the rest of Utah's schedule. They get Washington State, Arizona State, and Cal all at home.
Yeah.
And
again, fringe top 25 teams right now.
Correct.
All three of them. Washington State's at 19, Arizona State's 24, Cal's 23. Washington is again at 22.
And the thing is, too,
not a strong schedule.
You're relying on, if you're a Utah fan, you want to get to the playoff. You're relying on, the LSU and Alabama to lose at least once. Well, they have to because they'll play each other, but maybe one more time.
No.
You're going to have to hope that somebody possibly upsets Georgia. You're going to have somebody upset Ohio State. You're going to have somebody upset Oklahoma. And so you need help. It's not saying it's not impossible given the way things go. We see Ohio State at least one game each of the last few years. They've just decided to
stink it up again, like they did again last year against Purdue.
And the year against Iowa.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible, but
relying on other teams for help is not the route you want to go. You want to do everything
Correct.
possible that you can do to help yourself.
Right.
And like we've mentioned in the past, a Pac-12 team, the only way a Pac-12 team can help themselves is to be undefeated. They have to be, because you're not going to surpass any undefeated team, but certainly it's going to be a hard sell to put them past the one-loss SEC teams, because given the gauntlet the SEC plays, it's going to be very difficult to put an undefeated Utah team who may not even end up in the top 4 in the rankings undefeated into the college football playoff over one-loss SEC teams. Like, you're going to have to hope that SEC teams have more than one loss for you to be in the conversation.
And the other thing, too, that's an issue for them is I don't believe they have Oregon on their schedule. And Oregon was the one that they played Auburn tough on a neutral field. So even though they lost the game,
in theory they could play them in the Pac-12 championship game.
You're right. They could meet in the Pac-12 championship game, but Utah's going to have to win, and they're going to have to win convincingly. You're not going to be able to beat these teams that are on their schedule, 23-20 or 20-17.
No, they're going to have to come out and start beating teams by 2 touchdowns, and thus far they have. They did,
okay.
But their sample size is the NIU Huskies and Idaho State, but they're going to have to win convincingly in these games to give the optics that they can compete in the college football playoff.
This is a fun thing we always like to take a look at is the continued whatever thing is going on at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. They've got a big one this week. They survived double overtime against Army 2 weeks ago. They have a monster game this week that I'm looking at this. This is a possibility here. This could set. If they don't win this game against Wisconsin, and we're going to make picks on that here in just a bit. If they don't win this game at this Wisconsin, this could send them into a severe tailspin. And I'm talking a tailspin to where 7-5 is not out of the question the rest of the season.
We talked about this last week. Like could
this be the start, the beginning of the end for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan? I say it should, but it won't be.
It won't be because he's a Michigan man, and there'll be some kind of excuse. Well, Shea Patterson wasn't here the entire career, or whatever.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it already. Looking at their schedule and the way they underperformed against Army. Now, don't get me wrong, Army's a very good football team, and they'll probably win 10 football games, but one thing about military academies is they are undersized, and the way that Army dominated Michigan at the line of scrimmage and the way they stopped them on 3rd down and short, 4th down and short does not bode well for Michigan's offense with the Big Ten schedule, particularly against the teams they have to play that are going to be tough games for them.
This one,
Wisconsin in particular, and this is because it's the most pressing, but even looking forward, you're looking at Iowa, you're looking at Michigan State, who is now unranked, but their defense is pretty daggum good. Like, they held Arizona State to under 300 yards in that game. I believe it was 260-something yards. Their defensive front is very stout. Now, their offense is anemic, but their defense is very good. And then obviously Ohio State at the end of the year, but let's not forget Penn State at Penn State, which will probably be a whiteout. We'll probably see that one on primetime and as a whiteout.
Coolest environment in football.
Yeah, and against Notre Dame, who will probably trounce them because offense to offense, you're not competing with Notre Dame's offense if you're Michigan.
I'm looking at that schedule. After this Wisconsin game, I could theoretically see Michigan going 2-5 after that game because you have the home game against Rutgers.
Yeah, win against Rutgers, win against Illinois, who just lost to Eastern Michigan. Shout out Emu, by the way. 3 straight years beating a Big Ten team. Good for them.
and tearing Terry Wilson's patellar tendon. Bums. But you have that. You have the game against Iowa. That you would think they'll be able to get that one because it's at home. But
the way they were dominated up front against Army, like Iowa is going to have the bodies that they can dominate Michigan up front.
But you also look towards the back half of that last 7 at Penn State. Home against Notre Dame. At Maryland, who decided to just
after we bragged about them,
they
decided to come out
against Temple.
and shit themselves. But
Penn State, Notre Dame, Maryland, Michigan State. That's 4 losses in a row potentially.
In theory, yeah. Like again, Michigan State's defensive front is going to give their offensive line fits. At Indiana, who is probably another win, but again, then you're coming home for the game against a team that, at least right now in the season, Ohio State will dominate Michigan in that game if something does not change on the Michigan sideline.
Okay, so this now, Michigan at Wisconsin. They both had a week off to prepare it. Wisconsin has not allowed a point this year. They're allowing
shut out my Chippewas.
The competition has not exactly been the
greatest. It hasn't been stellar, but
they've outscored 110-0, and they're allowing 2.3 yards per play.
Yeah.
Can you make a case for Michigan?
No. You can't. And I've said this before, and I'm Shea Patterson's not the answer. Jim Harbaugh being a quarterback guru hasn't meant shit for him coaching quarterbacks at Michigan.
He hasn't been what?
It meant shit for him at Michigan.
Thank you.
Save Andrew Luck, who's the last franchise quarterback, not franchise, but who's the last dominating quarterback that he's had. Andrew Luck's the only quarterback that he's had. Mm-hmm. Shea Patterson, he's going to be a dark horse Heisman candidate. Sorry, Michigan fans, he's not a dark horse candidate because he doesn't make any good decisions and he's not a downfield thrower and he just sorry, it's not going anywhere. Charbonnet is a good freshman running back, but again, he's a true freshman. He's going to get beat up against Wisconsin. They're allowing 107 yards per game. 107 yards. Now, don't get me wrong, my Chippewas aren't exactly blowing up the world in offense, but they just went out and had almost 600 yards against Akron. Now, again, Akron's not very good, but a team that has potential to put up a lot of yards, and they held them to under 100. Chippewas were under 100 against Wisconsin, and that includes playing against their backups. We couldn't do anything offensively.
Chippewas get a trip down to South Beach to take on Miami this week. They're 30-point dogs. Do they cover?
Yeah, they're playing against Dan Enos, who says, I put my heart and soul into the Central Michigan Chippewas. So sorry, Sparty Dan. Sparty Dan didn't even live in Mount Pleasant. No, not exactly the highlight of suburbia living in Mount Pleasant.
Do they cover?
No, I don't think they do. It's just I would love for it to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes athletes just win games, and no offense to my Chippewas, we don't have a bunch of dudes who are better athletes than the dudes who play at Miami.
Anyway, back to this game. Michigan, Wisconsin.
Michigan's getting 4 points. They're the higher ranked team. They're going on the road. They're getting 4 points. I don't think they cover. I think this gets away from them. I think this is a 2-score win for Wisconsin. He's got 3 scores. I 55 points per game. I don't think Michigan can come close to that. I don't know if Michigan can get to 25.
I have Wisconsin winning this game 38-16. Jonathan Taylor, who got plenty of rest last week against
He didn't have to run. Well, 2 weeks ago. He got plenty of rest 2 weeks ago.
Correct. Right, yeah.
He only had 140 against the Chippewas before they shut him down for the day. I think he goes over 200 in this
200 yards and 4 touchdowns in this one. And I think this is where the rails starts to come off the rails for Michigan. I think Wisconsin wins this one big. We talked about a little bit ago the Utah Utes. Of course, in basketball, they're the running Utes. I don't know what that is. But they're in action Friday. This is Friday night at USC. A big one here that Utah has to have. I think they can get it done. I think they do get it done here. They've got a balanced offense, averaging around 460 yards per game and pretty split evenly along both sides. Plus, on the other side, USC's defense is rancid. They're giving up around 410 yards per game. So I like Utah to go into the Coliseum and get a win. And it's against an improved USC team. I think this is a USC team that, as the season goes along, they can work their way back into the top 25 in the rankings, which will help Utah's case.
Yeah, they've looked better of late, and in a season that we thought they might just be tanking to get Urban Meyer, it looks like they're going to put up a fight out there. And
they're still going to get California. Urban Meyer. I have Utah winning 28-17.
Of course, I don't give you scores, but I agree. I think Utah wins the game. USC just gives up too many points. Like I think offensively they can hang with them. I just don't think their defense is going to be able to be stout enough to stop Utah's offense. And Utah's defense is pretty daggum good. They're only averaging giving up 240 yards per game. So, I think I got USC coming home to the Coliseum, but not getting any better for them. I think Utah wins this one.
The big one, Saturday night, and it's fun to actually see this, two non-conference teams, two highly ranked teams willing to play each other. This is really cool to see. Notre Dame will play between the hedges at Georgia on a Saturday night, and a big statement game for both. Adam, you said earlier that Notre Dame has to win this if they want any shot at the playoff.
100%.
So do their playoff hopes end?
Yes, their playoff hopes end. I don't see a route for them. I mean, Georgia's just dominant, and they have been from recent memory. I don't see that now. When I wrote this, Notre Dame was getting 13.5. The spread has now gone up to 14.5. I think obviously the pollsters agree. I think Notre Dame plays them tough for a little while, and I think Georgia just pulls away. I don't see it. Jacob Fromm's, he's going to be a Heisman candidate. Swift in the backfield, running for 300 yards already this season. I don't see Notre Dame's athletes being able to compete in the long run. Again, I think this one stays relatively close until halftime, and then the second half it just gets away from them. I think Georgia wins this one.
Yeah, I think Georgia pulls away in the third quarter, kind of along the same lines. Something to keep an eye on in this game. Notre Dame's run defense has been awful this season. Here's a stat for you that somebody put out on Twitter, and it's a great stat to give you some context.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
Notre Dame has allowed 19 runs of at least 10 yards this season. And you're thinking, holy crap, that's really not good. Yeah. Well,
here's how not good it really is.
That's the 14th most of that in the country.
Yeah.
And what makes it even more pop out, you're thinking, okay, there's some other teams, they played really badly. Notre Dame, the 13 teams in front of them have all played 3 games. Notre Dame's played 2. So they're giving up nearly 10 rushing plays per game of 10 yards or more. And you're going to tell me that they're going to go into Athens against DeAndre Swift, who's just another in the line of Georgia running backs. They just keep cranking out.
Yeah, they're averaging almost 290 yards on the ground, by the way.
And a Georgia offensive line that's becoming Wisconsin-esque in terms of
their offensive line is nasty.
Right, in terms of their dominance. Yeah, I just don't see how Notre Dame can overcome that. And I know Notre Dame can score, but Georgia can play defense too. They're not too shabby.
Georgia plays defense probably a little bit better than New Mexico and Louisville.
I will have Georgia winning this game 38-17, and I will also say Georgia will run for over 300 yards in this game.
I think it's every likelihood that happens. Again, the stat that you just read with over 10-yard rushes. They're
19 times in 2 games.
Yeah, Notre Dame's given almost 230 yards on the ground per game. Again, against New Mexico and Louisville, who aren't exactly lighting it up on the ground. It could get ugly for Notre Dame. And again, maybe the first half, but as the game starts to grind on and Georgia just continues to pound them up front is when you're going to see those big runs start to get broke, and that's when I think they just start to pull away.
And also, Jacob Fromm just doesn't seem to turn the ball over either.
No,
and that's another thing.
He's a pretty efficient quarterback.
He is.
He's okay.
All right, lastly, before we get out of here, outside of those, possibly, maybe not. Our college football upset pick of the week, games to keep an eye on. Maybe an unranked team beats a ranked team, a lower ranked team beats a higher ranked team. Whatever the case may be, a team that's a severe underdog, goes on and pulls an upset.
Well, I don't have a severe underdog, and this one actually hurts me because I didn't want to do it. But looking through the games, I try to be logical about it. I got the Broncos. Broncos.
Boise?
No, I got the Western Michigan Broncos going to Syracuse, getting 6 points at Syracuse. But
how was that coming out of your mouth?
I know. I got them going to Syracuse and beating the Orange down there in the dome. So as much as I didn't want to do it, looking at games, I try and be logical. Western's offense is freaking good, and it scares me a little bit. Now they give up a bunch on defense, but they're averaging 500 yards per game on offense. Syracuse consequently also gives up 500 yards per game on offense or on defense. Now, again, they played Clemson for one of those games, but Maryland lit them up for 63 points. Western's averaging 40 points per game. Played well against a Michigan State team for a long time. Ended up losing in the end, but a previous undefeated Georgia State team who beat Tennessee. They went in and put 57 up against Georgia State.
How bad is Tennessee?
Yeah, Tennessee's not good. And I saw an article the other day. Somebody wrote about, Butch Jones will be a head coach in the college football again one day, and he will be. But I saw the tweeter reactions, and it reminds me why sometimes I just hate looking at people's comments on Twitter. But all the Tennessee fans are like, "Oh, good luck with that one. Oh, Butch Jones sucks, whatever." When was the last time you had a decent coach? Because he was the last coach that won 9 games there. Like,
he's a turd.
Yeah,
but he
didn't do well at Tennessee, but he also won 9 games for you twice. Like, who else? Like, since he left, they've been terrible.
Lane Kiffin, Derek Dooley.
Yeah, and including losing to Georgia State team.
Won 2 games last year.
Yeah, Tennessee's staring down a 6-6 season at best. Like, I don't know if you can be dogging Butch Jones when you haven't had any success since you fired him. So, I got the Broncos going to the Dome and beating Syracuse this week.
I'm going to go in a bit of a rebound game. I'm going to say Colorado goes on the road and beats Arizona State. Colorado did lose this past week to Air Force. It's a very different animal as we talked about the military academies. They all like to run the triple option. It's a very hard thing to stop. You look on the other side, Arizona State, nice job to go across the country into East Lansing and beat Sparty. But you look at Arizona State overall, number one, they can't score. And I'm not talking about just this game against Michigan State, because Michigan State is a tremendous defense. But the week before or 2 weeks before, they beat Sacramento State something like 19-3. Who the hell is Sacramento State? You look at that, and then,
I bet they're from Sacramento. I don't know. I couldn't tell you their
geography. You're a geography major.
I couldn't tell you their mascot. So
no, I think they're an FCS school. So you only put 19 up on them, and their first game, they scored a little bit more, but again, it wasn't impressive. I want to say it was against Kent State, but so there's that. I still like what Colorado's doing. Mel Tucker's doing a very good job. Again, the loss to Air Force, it was on the road. It was an overtime game. You're going against an offense you do not see week to week, so you can kind of understand where they're coming from. Steven Montez, Colorado's signal caller, has been playing very well thus far on the year. Nearly 900 yards, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks. So I like Colorado to go on the road and beat 24th ranked Arizona State.
I agree with that one. I don't disagree with that one at all. Obviously, again, the lack of offense for Arizona State is glaring.
What do you expect from Herm Edwards? I mean, we saw it during his tenure in the NFL, and he's brought his I have no idea what I'm doing on offense to college game, which you figure in college that's impossible to be hard. As bad as they are offensively.
It's hard, you would think, especially at a Pac-12 school who, you have a bevy of athletes out there on the West Coast. You think you could steal a few of them every once in a while, but thus far it doesn't look great. Well, he's got Marvin Lewis helping him out, which is probably one explanation on why they're doing so well.
Marvin's coach. He's coaching the coaches. That's his role as an advisor.
Well, again, when you hired Herm Edwards to basically be an advisor as your head coach,
general manager.
Yeah, general manager. It just it seems like a good move at the time, but
it was a name to hire a name.
Yep, of late, just hasn't looked that good so far.
It's fine. Like I said, very nice win against Michigan State. I don't want to take anything away from that. You go on the road and hold them to 7 points in their house. That's a really good defensive.
Their offense isn't great, but
no,
but winning that game with 3 missed kicks and Matt Coughlin as the kicker of the week.
Thank you.
But it's
so we'll
see where it goes from here. By the way, speaking of Pac-12, if you haven't already, go watch Mike Leach's commentary on the Pac-12 mascots in a mascot fight. It is hilarious. Again, Mike Leach, proving why he is a golden interview when it comes to the microphone, because That is one of the best clips I've seen in a while from him. He matches up all the Pac-12 mascots and picks which one was going to win. Includes a Harry Potter reference in there. It's funny. Go follow Coach Leach on the Twitter. He's hilarious. So
yeah, it's a funny clip. Go check it out. So to recap here, Colorado should get the upset over Arizona State, hopefully, and on the other side, Adam's rooting for Western Michigan.
Not rooting for them. 100% no. I just think they're getting the win. 100%.
You're rooting for them, but you're not rooting for them, but you want them to win.
No, I don't want them to win. I just think they're going to win. I didn't say I wanted them to win. I don't want them to win. Like when they played Central last year, I didn't want them to win. I just thought they were going to win. Like I don't want them to win the game, but they probably will because Syracuse is not good and Western puts up a bunch of points on offense. It's what they do. So anyway, like it.
So from him, go Broncos.
Get out of here with that trash. Damn it. What does this show become?
We'll maybe throw a celebration next week when Western Michigan beats Syracuse.
Shit, damn it. Fuck. Hashtag Fumblegate. I'll drink a Bells live on TV or live on Facebook and YouTube. If Western beats Syracuse, I will drink a Bells live on TV in celebration of Kalamazoo beer.
Follow us on the Twitter below.
At Fumblegate Fatty.
Facebook.com/Fumblegate. Send all your Go Broncos tweets. I don't know what their thing is.
Get out of here.
I don't know.
I think it's Row the Boat still. No, is it not Row the Boat?
No, he's at Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, they bought out the row. Well, I didn't know if they kept the oars on their helmets.
No, they let him
crap.
take it. They let him take it with them.
Yeah, horses can't swim apparently, so they got to row the boat. So stupid. But anyway. By the way, shout out to Carson King, the Iowa State student who made the sign for College Game Day, asking for money to his Venmo.
Beer money.
Beer money on Venmo. Initially, $11,000 put into his Venmo. He decided, hey, you know what? I'm being a little selfish. I'm going to give this money to the Iowa State Children's Hospital or the Iowa Children's Hospital right there next to the stadium. And since he announced that, the numbers already gone up to over $36,000. Anheuser-Busch has said they're going to match it. Venmo's also going to match it. So it looks like Iowa's Children's Hospital and that kid in particular getting a little come up, waving at the kids. But it's pretty awesome. Something for a college kid, and I mentioned it before we went on the air. A college kid who wakes up one day, he's got $11,000 in his Venmo. And says, you know what, I'm going to donate this to the Children's Hospital. And since then, it's taken off. And obviously now, latest estimate, over $36,000. It's going to get matched twice. So we're already over $100,000 going towards research at the Iowa Children's Hospital. So that's pretty cool story. Especially, again, the unselfishness of a college kid who could have just taken $11,000 and called it a day. It's a pretty awesome story to hear.
Yeah. So find that kid's Venmo and send him a few bucks.
Send him a few bucks.
You know where it's going.
It's getting matched twice, and it's going to the Iowa Children's Hospital. And again, let's hope none of us ever have to deal with that. But the families that do, that kind of money means a lot to the research that it could help save a child's life one day. That's some serious stuff, and it's a really cool deal for him and the Iowa Children's Hospital. So
be good to them. Be good to each other. Follow us on the social media. Go Broncos.
No.
We'll see you next week on Fumblegate.
No.